There is a ring of standing stones in the Texas Hill Country, and it is not a mirage. Great gray trilithons rise out of a mowed green field beside the Guadalupe River, and two enormous Easter Island heads stand guard nearby, staring across the grass. It looks 5,000 years old, and it is younger than most of the people who come to see it. This is Stonehenge II, in the little river town of Ingram, Texas, and it began as a joke between two neighbors. Come walk the circle with me, because the story behind these stones is even better than the view. First, the map. We are in Kerr County, in the heart of the Texas Hill Country, about 7 miles west of Kerrville. The town of Ingram sits on the Guadalupe River at the point where Johnson Creek and Indian Creek come down to join it. The stones stand on the campus of the Hill Country Arts Foundation, on Point Theater Road, right beside the river. It is a long way from Salisbury Plain, and that is exactly the point. It is the 12th of January, and this is what winter looks like in the Hill Country: mild air, low golden light, and green grass underfoot. The site is free and open every day from dawn until nightfall, so we simply walk in. From the first view, the circle reads as ancient, a full ring of uprights with great lintels bridging the tallest pairs. Then you notice how crisp the edges are, how evenly gray the surfaces run. Something here is not quite what it pretends to be, and that is where the story starts. The story begins with a single slab of limestone left over from a building project. In 1989, in the ranch country near the town of Hunt, a man named Doug Hill had a big piece of stone he did not need, and he offered it to his neighbor across the road, Al Shepard. Shepard was a patron of the local arts foundation, a man with a taste for the grand gesture. He stood the slab upright in his pasture like a lone monolith, and he liked the way it looked. Then he decided the lonely stone needed company, and he knew exactly what kind. What Al Shepard wanted was Stonehenge, his own Stonehenge, rising from a Texas hay meadow. He asked Doug Hill, who was a builder by trade, whether such a thing could be made, and the two of them set to work. Notice as we circle the ring how complete it is. This is not a fragment or a ruin. Where the real Stonehenge has toppled and lost stones over 40 centuries, this one was built whole, the way its ancient cousin might once have looked. It took the two neighbors about 9 months, working in a field, to raise an icon of prehistory. Here is the secret of the stones. Most of them are hollow, built as frames of wire mesh and then coated in plaster, sculpted and weathered to read as ancient rock. Only 2 of the stones near the center are real, big blocks of local limestone, including the original slab that started it all. That is why 2 men could build in 9 months what took ancient Britain generations. The monument is a stage set in the best sense, an illusion crafted with real care, and it has fooled first glances for more than 3 decades. Walk up close and the scale still lands. The replica stands about 90% as tall as the original Stonehenge, though the ring is only about 60% as wide, so the whole monument comes out around 2/3 the size of the real thing. The tallest arches rise well overhead, and from inside the circle the horizon disappears behind stone. One honest difference: this henge is not aligned to the sun. The builders were after the feeling of Stonehenge, not its astronomy, and the feeling is very much here. The monument this field is quoting stands on Salisbury Plain in southern England. The real Stonehenge was raised in stages between roughly 5,000 and 4,000 years ago by people who left no writing, only earthworks, burials, and the stones themselves. Its great sarsen uprights weigh on the order of 25 tons apiece, hauled from miles away and shaped with stone hammers. It is one of the most famous prehistoric monuments on Earth, and it has been drawing pilgrims, in one form or another, for most of recorded history. A plaster tribute in Texas is simply the newest chapter in a very long story of fascination. The deepest mystery of the original is transport. The smaller bluestones of Stonehenge have been traced to the Preseli Hills of Wales, roughly 150 miles from Salisbury Plain. Ancient builders moved multi-ton stones that entire distance without wheels, without metal, without written plans, and archaeologists still debate exactly how. Set against that feat, hauling plaster stones on a truck seems easy, and yet, as we will see, moving this replica became its own small epic. Stones, it turns out, never travel quietly. Here is something the real Stonehenge cannot offer. At the original, visitors are kept to a path outside the circle to protect the ancient ground. Here you can walk straight into the center, lay a hand on the uprights, and stand where only archaeologists stand in England. From the middle, the ring wraps all the way around you, lintels framing slices of hill country sky. It is the Stonehenge experience with the ropes removed, and it is completely free. For centuries, people explained Stonehenge with Druids. Antiquarians of the 16 and 1700s, like John Aubrey and William Stukeley, imagined white-robed Celtic priests raising the stones for their rites. Modern archaeology has ended that romance. The monument was already ancient, older by some 2,000 years before any Druid walked Britain. But the image never died, and replica henges like this one inherit a little of that theater. People come here for weddings, photographs, and solstice mornings, keeping up a tradition of imagination that is older than the science. From the air, the design snaps into focus. The ring resolves into a clean circle of uprights. The horseshoe of taller trilithons opens inside it, and the whole composition sits like a medallion on the green field. You can see the river trees beyond, and the low hill country ridges rolling off in every direction. The ancient original was meant to be read from the ground, by people who would never see it this way. The drone gives us a view the builders of Salisbury Plain could only have imagined. Now for the two gentlemen standing off to the side, because Al Shepard did not stop at Stonehenge. On Easter Island, far out in the Pacific, the Rapa Nui people carved nearly 900 great stone figures called moai, mostly between the 13th and 16th centuries. The statues stood on platforms around the island, ancestors in stone, watching over the communities that raised them. Their average height is around 13 feet, and that number is about to matter. Shepard decided his Texas field deserved a pair of them. So here they are, two Easter Island heads, each about 13 feet tall, full scale by the average of their originals. They are built the same way as the henge sculpted shells finished to read as carved volcanic rock, with the long noses, heavy brows, and solemn mouths of the real Moai. One stands near the circle, the other a little apart, and together they turn a replica into a collection. It may be the only place in Texas where Britain and Polynesia share a lawn. The real Moai were carved at a single volcanic crater called Rano Raraku, whose soft stone, called tuff, could be worked with hand tools of harder basalt. Carvers shaped each figure lying in the rock face, then cut it free and moved it miles across the island, and researchers still test theories about how, from wooden sledges to teams rocking the statues forward so they seem to walk. Hundreds of unfinished Moai remain in the quarry today, frozen mid-birth in the crater wall. Like Stonehenge, Easter Island poses the same great question: how did people with simple tools move mountains? That question is exactly what Al Shepard built his tribute to. Stand at the foot of one of these heads and look up, and the whimsy turns strangely solemn. The face is stern and patient, the same expression that has watched Pacific horizons for centuries, here fixed on a Texas river valley. Kids pose for photographs, and the Moai does not mind. This is folk art doing what great folk art does, borrowing the world's wonders and setting them down in a pasture where anyone can reach them. No ticket, no ocean crossing, just a walk across the grass. For over 2 decades, the monument stood in its original home, Al Shepard's land along the road west of Hunt, upstream on the Guadalupe. It became one of the great Texas roadside surprises, a full stone circle rising from a ranch meadow with the hills behind it. Travelers slammed on the brakes, turned around, and got out to stare. There was no gate and no gift shop, just a rancher's grand joke that had somehow become a landmark. People planned drives around it, and it quietly became part of hill country identity. Al Shepard was more than the man with the odd pasture. He was a patron of the Hill Country Arts Foundation, the arts organization downriver in Ingram, and his henge was, in its way, one more act of patronage, art given freely to anyone driving by. After Shepard passed away, the land at Hunt eventually changed hands, and the monument's future went uncertain. A stone circle, it turns out, is a hard thing to inherit. The question became whether Stonehenge II would survive its builder. Imagine the hill country losing these stones, the field plowed, the plaster broken up, the Moai hauled off. By 2010, that was a real possibility, and the community decided it would not happen. The Hill Country Arts Foundation, the very organization Shepard had supported, stepped up to give his monument a home. What followed was surely one of the stranger moving jobs in Texas history. You cannot fold a henge into a moving van. The foundation raised funds, and crews took the monument apart piece by piece. By December of 2010, the stones and both statues had been carried several miles downriver from Hunt to Ingram, and by 2011 the circle stood reassembled on the foundation's campus beside the Guadalupe. Every upright, every lintel, and both Moai made the journey and were set back in formation. The ancient builders of Salisbury Plain dragged their stones with muscle and rope. The Texans used trucks and cranes, but the spirit was oddly similar. A community decided the stones mattered and moved them. So today the henge lives here, on the Arts Foundation campus at the edge of Ingram, and the setting suits it. The lawn is kept, the river runs just beyond the trees, and the stones are free to visit from dawn until nightfall every day of the year. The only exception comes on the last weekend of September, when the Texas Arts and Crafts Fair fills these grounds. A roadside oddity became a curated landmark without losing its soul. It still costs nothing to stand inside a stone circle in Texas. The institution keeping the stones is a story in itself. The Hill Country Arts Foundation was begun at Ingram in 1958, a nonprofit that combines working art studios with theater for adults and young people. Its campus by the river includes galleries, classrooms, and an outdoor stage, and its name is on the road we walked in on, Point Theater Road. For decades, it has been the cultural anchor of this stretch of the Guadalupe Valley. Adopting a homemade Stonehenge was, for this outfit, perfectly in character. Stonehenge II belongs to a proud American tradition, the backyard megalith. Out in Alliance, Nebraska, a man named Jim Reinders raised Carhenge in 1987, a full Stonehenge replica built from 39 old automobiles painted gray. Other tributes have risen across the country in materials from foam to stacked cars, each one a love letter to the original. The Texas version, begun just 2 years after Carhenge, may be the most faithful of them all in shape and scale. Something about a circle of standing stones simply will not leave the human imagination alone. Walk past the stones and you meet the reason Ingram exists at all, the Guadalupe River. Even in January, the river runs clear and green under its bald cypress trees, the great buttress trunks bare for winter. This is one of the loveliest rivers in Texas, spring-fed and cold, sliding over limestone ledges. The henge gets the photographs, but the river built everything around it. Let us give it a moment. The Guadalupe rises from springs in the hills of western Kerr County, not far upstream from where we stand. From there, it runs roughly 230 miles across Texas to the coast, finishing in San Antonio Bay on the Gulf. Along its upper reaches, it is a hill country classic, clear water, cypress shade, and limestone bluffs, beloved by swimmers and paddlers for generations. Towns like Hunt, Ingram, and Kerrville grew up along it like beads on a string. The river is the oldest road in this country. The limestone underfoot explains the whole landscape. This is the Edwards Plateau, a great table of Cretaceous limestone laid down roughly 100 million years ago, when a warm, shallow sea covered this part of Texas. Countless shells and sea floors compacted into stone, the sea withdrew, and rivers like the Guadalupe have been carving the plateau into hills ever since. That is why hill country water runs so clear, filtered through stone, and why springs break out at the base of the hills. Even the two real stones in the circle behind us are pieces of that ancient seabed. From above, the geography tells its story in one view. The green line of the Guadalupe winds between rounded limestone hills, and the little grid of Ingram hugs the north bank where the creeks come in. You can see why people have always settled at this spot: water, shelter, timber, and level ground by the river. And there in the middle of it, improbable as ever, the gray ring of the Henge and its two staring heads. It may be the only river valley on Earth with this particular skyline. The town itself started with a store. The land hereabouts was granted by the state to John Tuhig back in 1847, and in 1879, a preacher and merchant named J.C.W. Ingram bought 6 acres at the creek crossing, opened a store and a post office, and gave the town his name. The creeks joining the river here, Johnson and Indian, carry names from those frontier decades, when this valley was still contested country and settlement came slowly. Farmers came first, then the town grew around Ingram's store. It was never large, and it never needed to be. The early economy came straight from the land. Settlers milled and ginned their crops at Sherman's Mill, which stood between Ingram and Hunt, and they split shingles from the big bald cypress trees along the river, roofing the frontier with wood grown on the Guadalupe. As field farming faded on the thin limestone soils, ranching took over, sheep and goats and cattle on the hills, and Kerr County became famous wool and mohair country. Later still, hunting leases and imported exotic game added another livelihood. This has always been a place that lives off its hills. Then the hill country discovered its best crop of all, visitors. Beginning in the 1920s, the healthful climate and the beauty of the Guadalupe made the resort business important to Ingram, and summer camps and river lodges spread along the valley. The Arts Foundation followed in 1958, and the old commercial strip evolved into a lane of galleries and studios. Today, Ingram is home to about 1,800 people, a small town with a river, an arts campus, and a Stonehenge. Not many towns of any size can close with that sentence. One more slow circuit before we go. Stonehenge II will not tell you anything about ancient astronomy, and it never claimed to. What it preserves is something else. The moment a man looked at a leftover slab of limestone and chose wonder over practicality. 2 neighbors built it for the joy of it. A town rescued it because it loved it, and strangers like us walked the circle for free on a January afternoon. That is its own kind of monument, and the plaster carries it well. The light is going long over the hills, and the stones are throwing their shadows across the grass, just as their ancestors do on Salisbury Plain. If you find yourself on the river road west of Kerrville, give Ingram an hour, walk the circle, meet the Moai, and put a hand on the stone that started it all. Some places you visit for what they are, and some for what they say about the people who made them. This one happily is both. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.